between the two that was not there on the original, a plastic blast fence.
I've been sitting on Martin Baker ejection seats for all but 3 years of my career, and they're not the comfiest, but they are quite reliable. We just have Connie in front of us here, taxiing, preparing for takeoff. You'll see Skates bringing the Dragonfly in from the right. Not a fast aircraft.
Not fast, but have a look at that wing, straight wing. It was designed for endurance. They could shut down the one of the engines to increase the endurance or the time over the target. And there were a lot of Vietnam guys, Vietnam pilots who actually used to do that all the time. With the large number of Vietnamese who came down to Australia, we've been able to talk to quite a few of them about their experiences flying these aircraft and other aircraft as well. Lao Air Force operated T-28s, and there was a guy that came to Bankstown Airport one day for an air show, and he was a baker. And he came out and he was talking about the T-28 and hopped up on the side and he said, "You're missing this and this and this and this." And he'd been flying them up there.
Incredible.
It's quite good to hear their experiences.
Yeah, and you'd see that straight wing shape of the aircraft. That was really repeated on the A-10 Thunderbolt, which is being used by the USAF to this day in a close air support, ground support role.
Because Vietnam was a jet war, a helicopter war, but it was also a piston engine aircraft war. Copious numbers of Sky Raiders used by both the Vietnamese, the US Air Force and also the US Navy for operations there, particularly the Sandy flights where they were picking up guys that were on the ground. If you ever want to read a great book, My Secret War by Rick Drury, really talks to you about Sky Raiders. They also had aircraft, the A-26 Invader, the twin-engine bomber built by Douglas, operated at the end of World War II in Europe and also during Korea, but they used them up in Vietnam.
So it's a really transformational period in warfare, the Vietnam War, seeing that the end of the World War II technology and really the coming of age of the jet aircraft in warfare.
The experiences of guys from World War II and after, you had a fighter squadron that was operating F-4 Phantoms up flying out of Ubon in Thailand, and it was led by Robin Olds, who was a Mustang ace from World War II.
Yeah, Robin Olds was an incredible pilot, probably the most famous offensive jet operations of Vietnam being Operation Bolo, led by Colonel Robin Olds. They disguised themselves as F-105 Thunder Chiefs when they're actually flying the air-to-air fighter, the F-4 Phantom, and they cleaned up a bunch of MiGs that day.
And it's probably had the most famous mustache in the US Air Force.
Yeah, it's a requirement. If you can grow a mustache, you probably need to grow one at some point in your fighter pilot career.
I had the pleasure and privilege of speaking with him at the Gathering of Mustangs and Legend in Kissimmee in Florida, and that room was full of like Mustang legends, and including the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah, Robin Olds was really the jet pilot's pilot, the fighter pilot's pilot, I should say. Ladies and gentlemen, give Air Vice Marshal Skidmore Skates a wave after that incredible display in the A-37 Dragonfly. We've got plenty coming up today. So we've just had the C-130 and the Dragonfly, we've got the Pitts, we've got the Connie, we've got the Avenger, and we're going to be finishing the day with the F-35 with plenty in between.
Now that holds a close place in your heart at the moment, as you are currently flying the F-35 with 3 Squadron.
Yeah, currently flying the F-35 with number 3 Squadron, so the day job's pretty busy and it's been a nice weekend here, but I'm back to work tomorrow.
Yeah, well, we will be able to get an inside the cockpit view of what is happening out there, which is something quite unusual.
Yeah, it's really hard to actually tell people what we do in the F-35 because it's classified. So I can give you a first-hand view of what it's like to fly the F-35 and what it's like to fight the F-35, and it really is an incredible aircraft. We talk about all that 5th generation, you would have seen that in Top Gun, it's 5th gen. And it really is. It's such an incredible piece of technology, and it's such an incredible fighter aircraft.
Well, we are really looking forward to that. We have a heritage flight with that and the Mustang, and we'll talk a lot more about that later on. There is plenty to do, and we'll also have a Balbo. What is a Balbo and why is it called that? Well, all of that will be revealed a little bit later in the program, as they say, folks. Film at 11, but we've got plenty more for you to see and hear here. Head down to the merchandising areas. We've got plenty of things to do. Got Airshows Down Under, Shellharbour. 2 for 1 at the moment. Head over there. That is an absolute bargain. I might even go over and see if I can con them out of a polo shirt. Now the Connie, ladies and gentlemen, if you've never seen this aircraft fly, it is one of the most elegant, beautiful airliners that has ever been built. We'll let you listen to its roar.
So these aircraft were flown in the golden age of piston air transport. They really were the height of luxury at the time they were in service.
That's what I meant. Prototype actually flew in 1943, way back when. And it came as part of a design request by Transcontinental and Western Airlines, later known by many of you as TWA, at the instigation of its major shareholder, Howard Hughes. And he wanted a 40-seat transcontinental airliner with pressurisation and a range of 3,500 miles. No more flying in DC-3s, cramped and slow.
I want to make it really nice in the cockpit. It was a pressurised cabin, so unlike the DC-3, which was unpressurised, when you'd get up to altitude, you could still be at a lower altitude in the actual cabin, which meant the aircraft could fly higher, fly further, and it's much more comfortable for the passengers.
Get out of the bad weather.
Get out of the bad weather.
Imagine flying over the Rockies in a DC-3.
Oh, it'd be fairly terrifying, I would imagine.
An interesting experience.
Yes. It's just such a graceful aircraft to watch, Ando.
If you have a look at the wing design, the wing plan form is very, very close to that of the P-38 fighter, also designed and built by Lockheed. That twin-engine, twin-boom aircraft that was famous during the Second World War and designed by Kelly Johnson, who now runs the Skunk Works, or Lockheed have this Skunk Works, which is the all-secret division.
Yeah, the Skunk Works is responsible for a number of aircraft, probably the most famous being the SR-79, which was Mach 3 capable, a little bit faster than Connie, which is out to the right, just coming down under the escarpment. But these engines, they were no slouches.
They had a lot of orders for these because they were so fast. Now this one is actually the Lockheed 1049. It is a what they call the Super Connie, and it has a cruise speed of about 480 kilometres an hour, which for the day was quite good. Maximum speed of about 677 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, these engines, they're Wright duplex cyclones, which is quite complex. 3,200 horsepower.
Turbo compounds, the exhaust driving turbos, which then put their power back into the engine itself. Now that is absolutely beautiful. They had about 84 orders by Pan Am and TWA and an unidentified customer that they thought could have been Japanese prior to the outbreak of World War II. But when America got into World War II, there was no authorization for the manufacture of commercial aircraft anymore. So they went into the military, and they were called C-69s to start off with. C for cargo, and 69 being the designation for the type. They used them right the way through the war, and they ordered hundreds of these things. Those and the DC-4s provided their heavy lift transport long range across the Atlantic.
And they actually survived quite a while in US military service. They survived all the way into the Vietnam War, where they were used as early morning aircraft, so they sit off the coast, listening out for electronic signals of surface to air missile launches, and then announce that to all the fighter pilots flying in the war zone.
It's like the Neptune. They can find a niche operation. This aircraft actually started off as a C-121, which was the cargo version of the aircraft used for transport, and HARS calls it Southern Preservation. It served with a number of units over there, first delivered in 1955, later went to the Mississippi, West Virginia and Pennsylvania Air National Guards. High-speed pass.
Just 200 feet above the ground, absolutely amazing. Now, it was a fairly busy crew up the front end. You had the pilot, the co-pilot, obviously sitting in the front left and right seats. There's a flight engineer, navigator, radio operator. So you can actually see photos of the cockpit. There are switches everywhere.
Switches and dials. There's a famous story about one of the pilots flying long range, and he was having a bit of a kip. He had his cap over his head. First officer said, we have a red light. He said, whose panel's it on? The flight engineers. Let him fix it. But you can imagine the engine management that went into the long-range flying. These pioneered really the kangaroo route, the modern kangaroo route for Qantas all the way to London. Look at that beautiful aircraft out there. Magnificently flown today by Bob Delahunty, who's the president and one of the founders of the Historic Aircraft Restoration Society. Lots of people have been involved with HARS over many years, including a good friend Gordon Glynn, who is sadly no longer with us, but very much missed down here by everyone at HARS.
Just thinking about these aircraft taking 3 to 5 days to get all the way to London. It was the quickest way you could actually get there at the time, so it feels like a long time to us now, but it would have been very luxurious, stopping into Singapore, spending a night at a hotel.
Sitting in the front bar at Raffles.
Sounds horrible.
Now, these engines were actually developed out of the engine fitted to the V-29 Super Fortress bomber of World War II. Now, they suffered a lot in development in the very, very early stages, and so Qantas actually had engines at every stop all the way to London. Some wags said it was the best 3-engine aircraft that Qantas ever operated.
That's a little bit cheeky, I think.
This machine was a bit of an accident by HARS, because they had gone to Davis Monthan Air Base to look and see if they could find spares and engines for their Lockheed Neptune, which we saw earlier on today. And they were told about this Connie that was there, and they evinced a bit of interest in it and eventually acquired it. The reason it was there was because it was supposed to be scrapped. However, somebody had actually left one of the cockpit windows open, and over a long period of time the pigeons got in, and pigeons do what pigeons do, and the scrappy said, no, we can't take it because it'll contaminate the metal. Therefore, they just left it. So HARS acquired the aircraft. They took out over 1/2 ton of pigeon guano from the airframe. 5 years of continuous work. They did about 16,000 man hours in 47 team return trips to the USA of 14 days each. Altogether, they raised about $800,000 in cash and got sponsorship services. And on the 25th of September 1994, this aircraft undertook its first post-restoration flight, landing in February 1996 at Sydney Airport. What a magnificent achievement.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, the hard work that HARS has put in over such a long period of time. And if you keep your eyes out to the left, you can see it coming in on its final approach. And once it lands, it'll eventually go into reverse thrust. So that's where the angle of the blade changes and pushes the air forwards instead of backwards.
Really was the golden age of flying. Sitting there with a real porcelain plate, real knives and forks, real food.
And a comfier chair, I would imagine.
I should imagine so. But HARS are to be really congratulated for what they've done with that aircraft, keeping it flying. At the present time, it is the only Super Connie flying anywhere in the world. There are a number of others, including one that was sponsored by Breitling, which was seen at Flying Legends at Duxford. But this is the only one currently flying.